So now there's some stats we're going to recover right now, because if you're probably right now, if you've gone into the market, you're like, hey, you know what, I'm going to go buy some eggs. You're like, hey, I want to buy some eggs, or I want to go buy some gas. I want to go buy something. You've noticed that the price is insane, and everyone keeps going and thinking, hey, you know, is there going to be a recession? Like, you know, and then there's like the news, like, hey, there's no recession. Someone's like, hey, there might be a recession. The reality is this is you have to be prepared, because you don't want to be at the heels of 2008, where 2000 happens, and then you're like, you know, I remember I had the story with this one guy. I'm going to be telling the story because how this one man basically went from basically making millions in real estate to the point in which he basically, if you called him to clean your gutters, he would have done that. So then again, let's go ahead and tune into it. I was having a conversation with acquaintance of mine. This was a very phenomenal guy. This was fairly, he was a mid 50s, let's say mid late 50s. And we're having a conversation, and we're having a conversation about the 2008 and 2009 crash, right? So he was a developer, basically, he was a contractor, and he was, you know, he was doing good money. Well, from what he told me, I'm not going to share the details, but he was making good money in 2008, 2009. And from what he told me, he said when the recession hit, when the market crashed, he could all of his business dried up. He had zero income coming in, no money coming in. And then the reason why I was thinking about, I was like, so what did you do? He's like, I couldn't find work because nobody else was hiring. There was nowhere else he could find work. So he was just in a position in which he was like, you know, he had a whole family to feed. He had kids that he had to take care of. But for some reason, because of what's going on in 2008, for 2 years, 2010, it got to the point in which it got so bad that the bank actually said, you know what, you either, you know, we're going to either come, you know, he actually was about to file for bankruptcy, but actually, when he was interacting with the bank's like, hey, listen, apparently they couldn't find a buyer for it. But long story short, by miracle, I'm trying to remember the story, but by miracle, he was able to find, without giving too much details into the story, he was able to find another, let's say, a big contracting company that was able to buy his lots for basically, you know, for to the point in which he was able to make some money, liquidate the assets, and actually, you know what, be able to avoid bankruptcy. Now, I'm looking at this, and I was having that conversation with him, and then I was kind of thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, so Emmanuel, what's your plan? Let's think about it. Let's say a recession in 2008 happens, because most people are like, hey, you know what? Is a recession going to happen? Are we gonna face a 2008 recession? Because majority of people aren't prepared for it. Because most people, I mean, Americans are usually what, at $986 billion in credit card debt and 2 trillion in student loans. Most people don't have the funds prepared for a recession. And one, you can rely on Uncle Sam to come save you in case if something happens. So it's best to be prepared ahead of time, because you don't want to be that one person where it starts snowing and you're the only one that doesn't have a jacket on because you didn't get the memo. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to look at a few, I was just doing some research, and just from the conversation I had with him, and I was like, hey, so is is a recession going to happen? Are we going to be in a position in which we're going to face a recession? And that's when, I was stumbling upon some research, and basically many Americans. This is very interesting. This is basically from CNBC. Many Americans fear an economic downturn could be as bad as the 2007 to 2009 financial crisis. A recent survey of 2,000 adults found, to the point 68% are expecting a recession in the next 6 months, and 80% of its respondents expect it to be severe. Okay. Now you're like thinking about, let's put that into context. What does that mean? That means if they interviewed 2,000 people, basically they had 1360 people, 1,360 people say, you know what? There's going to be a recession. And 80% of those 1,360 people are like, this is going to be bad. That's more for almost more than 1,000 people. Like, this is gonna be bad. Now, you're probably thinking, there's a lot of people that go, oh, you know what? We can't be all doom and gloom. We can't be all doom and gloom. Let's look at it from this standpoint. There's always an economic correction in the market, right? So there's always, it's bullish sometimes and it goes bearish. There's times in which you're making money, and then there's times in which you're not making money. But you got to be looking at it from the standpoint as to what are you doing right now to prepare for one. What are you doing right now to prepare for recession? But then also, not even just in the sense as to what are you doing right now to prepare for recession, is what are the signs? Like, because most people are like, no, there's no recession happening. We're not gonna have a recession. What in God's name are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. Like, everything's been going good. I'm traveling the world. I've been to like 7 to 8 countries. It's good. There's such a thing as living in a bubble. Okay. And most people are living in a bubble. And here's the thing is when you live in a bubble, you know what happens? When the bubble bursts, you don't know. You don't expect it. Boom. You don't know where the leak is. You don't know where that weak spot is in a bubble because you're living in a bubble. Now, majority of people are living in a bubble and not preparing themselves financially to the point to which if something were to happen. Okay. Now, why am I making this? Should there be? Could there be? I don't know. I'm not saying this. Saying definitely there could be one. I'm not saying here to saying this to spread fear and people go. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm not. My genuine interest here is basically that you go ahead and educate yourself as far as is there going to be one or is there not going to be one. I can't say there's going to be one. I can't even say when one is going to be. But all I'm saying is there's a lot of smoke in the air. There's a lot of basically smells a little fishy for the most part, in the senses too there might be one. You never know. You never know. But you got to be prepared for it, and you got to ask yourself, what are you doing right now to prepare for it? There's a lot of things that's happening in different avenues. I could tell you about I could talk to you about stuff to motivate you and talk to you about how life is stuff. But then again, what are you doing about it? So let's go ahead and look into this. Let's look into this data. So one of the stats we're going to be covering right now, which is just basically this is a you can find this. This is a Forbes article, but this Forbes article that we're going to be covering right now is, let's go ahead and get this up on the screen. This Forbes article that we're going to be covering right now is basically talking about basically a few things that are happening in commercial real estate. And the reason why I'm saying commercial real estate is this is when you go to the downtown of your city, right? Whatever city you're in, let's say you're in Los Angeles or you're in North Carolina or some city, well, that's a state, but whatever city you're in, go to the downtown and see, who's going in the offices. Most people aren't going in offices anymore because most people are doing a work from home situation now. Now it's a work from home, it's because, prior to what happened in 2020, you had to be in an office, but now we're in a position in which you could work any job from the comfort of your home. And most people prefer to do that because guess what? It saves you, if you had to get out of your house at 7:30 to drive an hour at 8:30 hour and be stuck in traffic for an hour and 15 minutes just to be able to get to work, to start work at 8:45, to clock in at 8:45, to start work at 9, and then you left at 5:30, and then you had to do the same hour drive to get home at 6:37, and then by the time you go to bed, which is probably 9, 10 o'clock, and wake up again back again at 6:37, it's already like you're like, oh my god, why am I doing this? Because most people genuinely do not like the jobs that they do. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with not liking the job that you do. There's a reason why most people go seek, more education or go get a better network. But most people don't, because the reason why most people don't like the job that they do, or the reason why most people say to themselves that, hi, I want to work from home. I want to be in a work from home position. You know why that is? That's because as human beings, we want the ability of choice. You want the ability of decision. You want the ability to be able to make your own moves. You want the ability to be able to say, you know what, I'm the one deciding my day. And when you're having to wake up at 6:30 in the morning against your, well, technically against your own will, but if you don't wake up at that time, you don't go to work, you don't pay bills, landlord comes calling, and then, it's a whole chain reaction from there. But the reason why most people don't like their jobs is not because your job's inherently bad. It's not because that, it's because genuinely work is stressful and most people don't like stress. And when that sleep is hitting you good, you sleeping good and you relax and you're like, oh my god, I could shut my eyes for another 45 minutes, another hour, and then your alarm goes off, and guess what? Now you got to wake up. But you don't want to wake up. And then you're driving to the job and then you say you hate the job. But then the reality is not that you hate the job. You hate the fact that you can't make the decision as far as when you go to work, where you go to work, and what you do at work. That's the main thing. It's most people just can't make that decision. And as human beings, we want autonomy and we want independence. So that's the reason why most people go say, you know what, I'm going to be self-employed and work my own job and work for myself. The reality is this is working for yourself. I know we're going to get into the commercial real estate because there's a point I'm trying to get to, but working for yourself is more stressful than working for your job, because guess what? Your job gives you Christmas off. Your job gives you Thanksgiving off. Your job gives you some time off. So your job gives you whatever, you could request, hey, I want to go see my grandmom, and, you might be able to get some time off, but then the reality is this is when you start working for yourself, you don't have the ability to take time off. I was looking at this Instagram feed and they're like, why are you working a job where, they give you 2 weeks of vacation that you can go see your family a year? 2 weeks so where you can go spend time with your family. It's like they're like, is that freedom? That's not freedom. The reality is this: is when you start your own business and you're having to deal with phone calls on a daily basis, and you basically realize that you're, because the thing is this, I'm gonna tell you this: we all have a boss. I'm gonna straight up tell you right now, you and I all have a boss. Either your boss is your manager, whoever it is that has been put in charge, or your boss is your customer. So that's why when people say I work my own jobs, I'm independent. I'm gonna tell you something, right? You're independent, and if your customers stop showing up and stop giving you money and stop taking using your service, guess what? You're out of a job. So we are all employed by each other because we're a community. The services that I use in some way, shape, or form, I am the boss in a way. If I'm the only customer, technically I am. But if I'm not the only customer and they have 200 customers, they have 200 bosses. What does that mean? That means you have to deal with 200 different personalities. Now, there's different variables to it where you can pick your customers, but then again, that also takes time. So which means you got to be in a position in which you have to, be able to basically deal with the grind. But most people are not willing to deal with the grind because most people are just going to stay and live in a life of complaining about how light your life is, complaining about, what's going on, complaining about the reality is this. Listen, happiness is a choice. Your job's not going to make you happy. Money's not going to make you happy. You could get $50,000 right now, but if you have bad health and you get 50,000, guess what? You're still not going to be happy. You could get 100 grand right now, but if the doctor told you had a day to live and you had 100 grand, it wouldn't mean anything. What would mean something is the fact that you decide and you choose to be happy. You choose the reality in the life that you want, knowing that nobody else in this world can make you happy but yourself. Now, what does that mean for commercial real estate as we transition to commercial real estate? Most people are not working from home, are not working in the office anymore because now they're working from home because they get more fulfillment that way. They believe they do. But then again, that's also in a sense affecting the market that's also called the commercial real estate market. Okay, because guess what? The more vacancies you have, and you also got to think about the fact that the feds are raising interest rates. Now, when the Fed raises interest rates, you have to understand most of those loans are variable loans, right? And now, guess what ends up happening is most of the loans are maturing. By 2025, there's going to be a lot of loans. Commercial real estate loans are going to be maturing. So, what does that mean? That means there's a lot of people that are going to have to pay money. And guess what? If you're a landlord for a commercial real estate building that you bought for $40-50 million and you're servicing it, and basically now the loan is coming to a position in which now you can't pay that loan because you have no tenants. Because then again, the people that would come and rent the office space from you don't see a reason to rent the office space because the employees are working from home, traveling the world. Guess what happens? Now you're out of business. Now, to the average consumer, most people watching is like, why do I care? Because it doesn't directly affect you. Well, it actually, in some way, shape, or form, it actually definitely does affect you because you're thinking, well, I don't own commercial real estate. I don't own any commercial real estate. I own my house. Or you're probably saying, I rent my house. It doesn't affect me. Well, guess what? Who owns everything? The bank. Okay? Now, if you've watched this, or if you've been following me for a while, then you know that the banks don't make money. Federal Reserve does. The banks don't make money. The banks basically circulate the money. Okay. Now, what ends up happening is this: the banks, when you deposit your money in the banks, when you deposit it, what do? They keep a portion of it. Sometimes maybe they don't. And then they loan the rest out. Who do they loan it to? They loan it to investors. What do the investors do with the money? They buy commercial real estate. Not all of them, but they buy commercial real estate. Now think about it. How does this trickle down? Trickle it down. Let me go ahead and pull my board up. I want to pull my board up before we go ahead and continue on with this project here really quickly. Let me go ahead and pull my board up. Let me see if I still have this board. I think I should still have it. My fancy board. No, because this is there we go. That's my cool board right there. Absolutely not. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I got my fancy board. All right. So we're gonna go through basically a process here. And I want to explain something to you. Let's look at it from a perspective of this. We have the bank. By the bank, we're represented by a dollar sign. Okay, you, Jimmy, Timmy, regular everyday civilian. Okay, doing your stuff. You're like, whoa, what's up? You know how that you make your job, you make your money. Your employer gives you the money. You go, and you deposit it in the bank. The bank says, wow, thank you, Jimmy, for being awesome. We're going to keep 10% and we're going to loan out 90% to, we're going to use this as, we're going to use this car. Okay. You could tell my drawing is a little interesting. That's going to be the investor. So they go, all right, I'm going to give this money to investor Frank. Frank is like, thank you, bank. You know what I'm going to do? Now I'm going to go ahead and go to commercial to get some buildings, and I'm going to make some commercial real estate. So let's say this is commercial real estate. All right. Now, and then they're going to go ahead and say, you know what? That building, we're going to go ahead and, Timmy. And then what's going to happen is basically, let's reverse it this way. Now, Timmy is going to be like, hey, or let's say somebody else, Jimmy, is going to be like, hey, I now want to basically lease your building. Jimmy comes, leases the building from the landlord, wherever it is right now. And then, pays a portion of it. And then whatever the difference is, the investor here keeps his cut and then services the debt with the bank. Now, and then when he services the debt with the bank ensures that they keep your money safe. Right? Because then again, if you come back to the bank and say, hey guys, I need my money, the bank is like, okay, hey, we've got your money. Here you go. You need your money. Here's your money. But when he defaults, don't pay, or basically there's nobody to lease this building to, and the interest rates are crazy that even if they lease it, they're going to lease it to have to lease it for an extraordinary amount of money. What ends up happening is now he's like, I can't pay for this because guess what? I borrowed the money from the bank to loan it to somebody else, to pay for me. But now I don't have anyone to pay. So now I don't have any, this building is empty and I can't keep making the payments myself. So now they default, and then the money goes back to the bank, and the bank is like, well, we don't have anything. So the bank comes in, takes this asset, liquidates it. You have a $300 million building now selling for 45 million or 70 million because guess what? Now the bank, that's a loss. Now, what does that do? That comes back to you. Now, imagine if you have multitudes of this commercial real estate buildings and multitudes of investors defaulting at the same time. And then you have people going to ask for money. Where's the bank going to get the money from? Because I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you know this, guys. But when you look at your phone and you check your phone, your account, whatever amount of money that you see in that account, those are ones and zeros. Because guess what? When you go to the bank, they're like, we don't have it. If you see 50 grand in your account, and you go to the bank and see what 50 grand, they're like, come back tomorrow. Come back the next day. Come back the day after. They don't have it. Now, what does this mean for you? What this means for you is this. Very simple. You are going to have to basically, I'm not saying take your money out the bank. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't make it run on the bank, because people doing that was the reason why Silicon Valley Bank went basically belly up, because they didn't have the money, and a lot of people came and said, we want our money. And then boom, next thing you know, the bank is boom, out of business. Now, let's go ahead and look at some stats here. All right. We're going to look at some stats here, basically based off of this Forbes article. And then we're going to proceed. All right. So as we dive deeper here, so there's too much office space. So there basically been so much as vacant office space in the first quarter of 2023. The average U.S. office vacancy rate was 18.6%, and that's 5.9% more than average, right? Now, okay. Now, as it gets a little better, all right, the commercial real estate headwinds are so great that some 330 million square feet of U.S. space could now be obsolete by 2030. 330 million square feet. That's probably bigger than most small countries. Well, small countries, right? Could be vacant by 2030. All right. And then you also look at it from the fact there's a plunge in commercial real estate prices, which includes offices, apartment complexes, warehouses, and malls. It suffered a 15% drop in price for the year ending March 2023. So this was 2023 data. Okay. As basically was reported by CNN, right? Those prices decline are likely to persist, which he'll hear of real estate strategy Gordon Stairs. So CNN thinks the pressure to work from home and stricter lending standards could send prices down anywhere from 20% to more than 30%, with office space valuations being the biggest loser. Isn't that crazy? That to me is insane, because I'm looking at it from a perspective going, okay, let's back this up a little bit. Okay, let's back this up. So what you're probably thinking right now is you're saying, okay, so does that mean that we all need to go back to the office, go back to working in local offices? No, that's not going to happen. That's never going to happen because here's the thing: human beings do not go back in quality of life. You and I are humans, right? Imagine, you want to know there was a stats that like somebody who goes from making 50,000 a year to like a million, like you win the lottery and then you lose all that money and you go back to 50 or whatever it is. Most people end up in depression because human beings don't go back in quality of life. It doesn't happen. Like it just doesn't happen. There was a decline in fulfillment because you were just imagine in the census too. Think about it from this way. Imagine your basically your body is an air conditioner, right? Is a thermostat. Your body's a thermostat, right? Let's say right now, imagine this, right? So it's super, super cold, freezing. You were like it's super cold, and then all of a sudden you walked into this super hot 74, 75-degree weather. You're just chilling, you're relaxing, everything's cool, everything's good. You're like, oh my God, best weather on the planet. And then all of a sudden, you get hit with a cold breeze, boom, negative 40 degrees. And you're like, what's happening? Now you're going from a census to now you have to go backwards to probably even worse stuff to the condition that you were in. Because the thing is, most people do not go back in quality of life. That's why when you go from making 20,000 or 50,000 a year, you 50,000 whatever per month, you can drop down. That's not how it works in the human mind. That's not how it works at all. So now when you're looking at it from the perspective of people are working from home and you're like, well, guys, you're not really going to be working from home anymore. We need you to come back in the office so that we can basically save the commercial real estate industry or the real estate industry. And they're like, no, I'm not coming back. No. They're like, no, they want to work from home. Everybody wants to work from because guess what? You work from home, you see more, you spend more time with your kids, you spend more time with your family, you get to go to date nights, you get an extra 2 to 3 hours. Most people are not going to go back. So what that means is commercial real estate, I hate to say it, is probably headed for a point in which either they convert those buildings into houses anytime soon, which you can't even do that because then again, most of you need a lot of space. And most commercial real estate buildings are stacked on buildings on top of each other. Like you go to apartments where you have floor 1, floor 2, floor 3, floor 4, floor 5, different floors. Same deal. So if we're looking at it from an office space building, most office space buildings are vacant. Vacancy. Vacante. I don't know if that's a word. I think that's a word, but we'll pretend it's a word. So let's come back in here. So we basically loans coming in due. This is where it's interesting. Loans are coming due in a more hostile climate. A load of loans are coming due this year and next. The Mortgage Bankers Association estimates $92 billion in debt for office buildings will come due in 2023. And then another $58 billion will come due in 2024. People are already defaulting, guys. $92 billion already is due. And another $58 billion will be due in 2024. Okay? If you're not understanding how much that is $150 billion in the past, between the past this year and next year is going to be due. Where are they going to get the money from? Well, you're probably going, well, Emmanuel, who told them to go lease those buildings? Who told them to go rent those buildings? Who told them to go get a loan? That's not my fault. It doesn't matter who started it. The reality is this: we're all in it together. Okay? It doesn't matter who started it. Okay? It doesn't matter who went and over leveraged themselves. We're all in it together. Okay? Now, is there research? I don't know. Who knows? The reality is, are you prepared? Okay? Now, property owners are setting the stage for more defaults. 2 property owners have defaulted so far this year, and more could be. A landlord owned by asset manager PMC Co. defaulted on nearly $2 billion in debt. $2 billion in debt was defaulted on for 7 office buildings in San Francisco, New York, Boston, and Jersey City, according to Bloomberg. Okay, in February 2023, Canadian asset manager Brookfield walked away from 2 prime office buildings in LA after defaults on $784 million worth of loans. I want you to think about that. That's almost $3 billion in defaults. $2.7 billion in defaults. We're already adding up to 150 though. We're adding up to 150. And then if Brookfield wrote in February found that it had stopped payment on only about 2% of all its properties while trying to negotiate a modification or restructuring of this debt. If the negotiation does not work, Brookfield could transfer certain properties to the lenders. Three banks with heavy exposure to office space. Just think about it, right? And you have to think about it. What banks are now exposed to this? If you thought SVB's abrupt deposit withdrawals were scary, consider what could happen to banks with too much exposure to office space buildings. In March, Silicon Valley Bank faced abrupt demand to withdraw deposits, and when it went to sell its treasury securities, higher interest rates triggered a $2 billion loss. So it tried to liquidate to be able to pay off, because what happens is when you go to the bank and you say, hey, Mr. Banker, oh my God, I want my money back because I got to pay for something. The bank has to liquidate to send you your money. And if you're liquidating at higher interest rates and they're like, okay, yeah, we're losing money for every time we sell, what ends up happening? They can't pay you. Especially if you have large withdrawals coming in. And that is what happened to Silicon Valley Bank. You're probably thinking, well, that's not going to happen again because the government is insured and we're FDIC. Oh, my God. Don't be naive. Go do your research. Okay? One thing is this. You got to be prepared. Okay? Because it might be happening. We never know. I'm not trying to. I don't know. But then again, is are you looking at the data? Are you studying the data? Are you studying the data? That's what we got to be looking at there, guys. So as we continue on here, basically you have $2 billion in loss. Given the large commercial real estate drops, a similar doom loop could unfold with banks that are too dependent on commercial real estate loans. Questions about the health of banks with high commercial real estate exposure could cause customers to pull deposits. Lenders could demand immediate repayment of your loans, accelerating the downturn and sending more depositors fleeing, said Neil Shearing, chief economist at Capital Economics. Okay, so you got to think about it. So this is Valley National. With nearly $50 billion in 2022, Valley National's most recent financial performance looks good. However, this pretty much goes on where we could look at the bank's financials. We could look at, everything is basically, the numbers, and we can go, oh, you know what? Hey, the banks aren't looking too good on this. Now, are they doing something in a sense to say, hey, you know what? We're preparing and making sure that basically, we don't face it 2008. I don't know. The reality is this is you cannot be waiting on a banking system or whatever it is to help you out, because then again, the banking system was designed to make money. It wasn't designed to, it was designed to make money. Let's think about it from that. Yeah, they mitigate risk, but for the most part, when the whole economy that you're operating within is now basically, in a position in which you cannot make money, the banking system does not work if it's not making money, because the banks cannot just hold your money in reserve. They need to be earning an interest and earning them profit from the money. So the bank basically needs to be making money. Okay. So if we look at this is another article that I pulled here. So the decreasing demand of vacant offices. Even before the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, the commercial real estate market was already grappling with multiple challenges. The rise of remote work has led to a decrease in demand for office spaces, which has been further I'm not going to say the word. I don't know why my sorry. It's exacerbated. Okay. By escalating maintenance costs and interest rates. According to Morgan Stanley analysts, there is a potential for a decline in commercial property prices by up to 40%, which would rival the magnitude of 2008 financial crisis. Think about this. If the prices drop by 40%, because then again, 2008 crisis was caused by one. You had what? You had people get a little bit too greedy. Like, hey, interest rates was initially super low and investors weren't making any money. So the bank's like, hey, how about we just basically we sell mortgage bonds. Basically, we bond up a bunch of mortgages together and we sell them out and say, hey, you're making a return, you have this much assets, you building this. So that was basically the asset. So what they ended up and they started doing was basically just no money down, no credit check, bad credit, whatever it is. They just started loaning and saying everybody can get a loan. You can get a loan. You can get a loan. You can get a loan. And guess what happened? You had strippers that had 14 houses. You had people who had 12, who had stuff that they couldn't pay for because the banks just needed something in the balance sheet. And that led to one of the biggest collapse. I won't say the biggest collapse, but one of the financial crisis that hurt the man we spoke about in the first year. It hurt him in 2008 to 2010. And he didn't have any part in this. but it hurt him 2008 to 2010. So you're looking at this going, well, I don't have any part in commercial real estate. But just like him, the innocent ones are the ones who usually end up paying the price because guess what? The bank's going to end up getting bailed out. Are you prepared if another one happens? No one is. Reality. But the reality is this: get educated. That's the whole point of this channel is to get educated. Educate yourself. If you're not going to educate yourself, then dude, I don't even know what to tell you. Educate yourself. Don't be somebody who's going to be naive and waiting and like, oh, well, they're going to come bail us out. They're going to come help. No one's coming to save you, my friend. I don't know who you are, but no, nobody's coming to save you. So you got to come into the position and you say, hey, man, okay, what are the actionable steps that I can think? What steps can I take right now? I don't know. How liquid are you? Cash wise, how liquid are you? Have you actually thought about it? If you're not, then then you got to think about it. You know, want to know what's also funny? Is what's also funny is that most people even at the fact that basically people there's still a the fact that commercial real estate is getting to the point where in which the prices are drop about 40%. You have an 18 to 25% vacancy. You still have the US still spending like crazy. People are still spending. Oh my God, I want to buy. And guess what? Christmas is probably one of the biggest spending seasons for spending because guess what? You got to buy gifts for your kids. You got to buy gifts for your family. So what do people do? Hey, they're like, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt. It's not gonna hurt if I go spend, $200 here, $500 here, and it adds up. Well, remember, trust me, you don't know what's gonna happen in the future, so you got to be very careful with that. Now, I'm very curious what your thoughts are. Definitely go ahead and send a go ahead and leave your comments, follow the channel, and also if you want to let me know what you think about this, go on Instagram and DM me on Instagram at the Real Igor and say, hey, this is what I think about this. I love your episode, whatever it is. But if you want to connect with me, the best place to reach me at is to go on Instagram at the Real Igor. And it's a pleasure having everybody on. And listen, guys, I look just forward to have you guys join me on the next episode. And